I'm Kimberly Washburn, Curator of Education at the Florence County Museum. Welcome to September's Family Day at Home. Today we're going to be making painted paper landscape collages. These works are inspired by the work of artist Lisa Watson, who is a Savannah, Georgia-based artist who creates work with recycled materials, collage work, and assemblage work. So we're going to take a few moments and make a collage inspired by her work. This is an example of what we're going to be making today. I'm going to show you how to create painted papers with texture to create this lovely landscape. So here we go. You're going to need to gather a few things from your Family Day at Home kit. You're going to need a piece of newsprint. You're going to need 4 sheets of paper that are already cut for you. There's a half sheet of blue, a small sheet of brown, some green, and then a yellow, orange, or red piece of paper. You'll notice that 2 of these are already painted. So your warm colored paper already has some painted texture, and your brown paper already has some painted texture. We've gone ahead and done that for you. We're going to make a paintbrush together today to create some texture on our blue paper. So this will be our background paper, and we're going to create some cloud texture in the background. You can create paintbrushes with all sorts of things that you can find around the house, but we're going to be using recycled materials in the spirit of Lisa Watson here. So we have some packing foam that we had lying around here at the museum, and a rubber band. These are all we need to create a fun paintbrush. You will need to find from around your house a pair of scissors, so go ahead and gather that. The other things you'll need for this project are a cup of white paint and a glue stick. These are both in your kit. So we're going to start by making our paintbrush, and we're going to use our foam sheet. And we're just going to make some slits with our scissors all the way down the long end of our foam sheet. So we'll just cut really close together, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch apart, all the way down our foam sheet. Now I have one I've already finished, just for time's sake. So here is that. And you can see that there's slits cut all the way down this long edge. Now you're going to lay your paintbrush down, and you're going to just roll it all along the length of that sheet of foam. Roll it up nice and tight, as tight as you can roll it. So it looks like this. And then I'm just going to use my rubber band to secure it. Just wrap that around the little handle and fluff up those little slits that we made, and there's a paintbrush. So we're going to add texture to our blue sheet. We're going to add some cloud background texture with our brush. I'm going to use my cup of white paint and the paintbrush I just made, and we're just going to dab it in, and I'm going to kind of get some of the paint off. I'm just using the lid of my cup to remove some of that paint, and I'm just going to do some dabs on my paper. Now I can be selective about where I put those dabs. If I want more texture here, just continue to dab. If I want it to be sort of thicker texture, I just dab more. I like to kind of twist the paintbrush as I dab it. And I like to leave some areas open. Now I know I'm going to be gluing some things at the bottom of this paper, so I don't have to paint it all the way down. I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm done with this paint for now. Set it aside. This foam paintbrush can actually just be washed off and used again, so you could save this if you would like. Next time you get a package in the mail covered in that foam, just stash it to the side. You never know what you could use it for. I'm going to remove my newsprint now because I don't need that anymore, and I don't want to get anything else dirty. So this is going to be the background of my artwork. And the next step is going to be to create some mountains. Now I'm going to sort of create hills or mountains in the background with this brown paper. And I'm going to do this by tearing. Now I could use the scissors to cut out a landscaped sort of mountain scene in the background, but I really like the effect and texture that tearing gives. So I'm going to carefully tear the paper sort of up and down to create some hills or mountains in the background. I'm going to tear along the length, so I'm going to turn this the long way. I'm going to tear along the length of the paper, and I'm not going to tear quickly. I'm going to go nice and slow so that I can control the direction that I'm tearing the paper in. So I know that I want the mountain to come up and then back down. So I'm going to start sort of in the middle and gently just tear the paper so that I'm coming up. See, you'll notice I'm just tearing a little bit at a time and back down. Maybe I want to come back up again. Go nice and slow. No need to go too quickly. I'm just pulling the paper. Okay. I know I want to come back up, so I'm just going to pull that paper back up like this to create my background sort of mountain scene. So this is going to go right on top of my paper. Now my paper's almost dry. I didn't put very much paint on it, so I don't really need to worry about letting that dry a long time. If your paper is goopy and wet, you're definitely going to want to let it dry before you start gluing. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. I'm not going to glue it all the way at the base of my paper because I'm going to cover the base with other papers. So I'm going to put it maybe 1.5 inches or so up. I'm going to take my glue stick and add some glue along the back of this, especially around the edges, so that it's nice and secure on my paper. I'm going to put this up right about here. Now we have the mountains over that nice sky that we made. Those wispy clouds. The next step is going to be to add an area like a field of grass. So this is going to go a little bit below the mountains. So what we're doing really is in our landscape creating a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. In the background we have the sky and the mountains. Those are the things that are the farthest away from us. One way that we can create the illusion of space in our artwork is by layering things on top. The thing that's on top appears as if it's in front of the thing that's underneath. So our field will appear as if it's in front of our mountains. So we're going to create that illusion of space. This green will be our middle ground. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. Now I don't want this to look like mountains, but I don't want it to be a completely flat surface. If I wanted it to be flat, I could just tear it straight down. But I want mine to be a little bit bumpier than that. So I'm just going to kind of tear the top part off. I'm not going way down in the paper. You'll notice this isn't mountains, but it's not completely flat either. I'm just tearing it. I love that teared edge and the texture that it gives. All right, so I've torn that, and I'm going to set that right on top here. And I can decide how far down I want it to come. Remember, the green is your middle ground, so we want to leave room for something to be on top, to be in the front or the foreground. So I'd like it to go about here. I'm still leaving maybe a little at the bottom that's blue, maybe 1/2 inch, maybe a little less. I'm going to go ahead and add glue to the back of my paper. And I'll put my middle ground right down where I want it and give it a little press. Okay. So now we have our sky in the background, we have our mountains in the background, and in the middle ground, in front of the mountains, we have a green field area. And last but not least, we're going to add an area that's kind of like a little flower garden. I love the texture of this bright paper, and maybe it's a field of wildflowers in the foreground closest to us in the landscape. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to tear the paper right down the middle maybe to get that foreground area. Now I actually have one I've already torn. So I'm going to take that, set it here, and make sure that it covers up the blue, which it does. And I'm going to add glue. And glue that right down. So now we have our landscape artwork that has a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. We've used papers that are painted to create texture and layered them on top of each other in a collage to create a landscape.